Yeah, listen, it's a great point because you're right. I think the best teams in when you look at it, it's about relationships on the pitch, right?
Yeah.
And I think when you're chopping and changing, and I understand it now because these top teams are playing so many games now, adding competitions, making competitions bigger. You need to build up that rapport. So you're right. Certainly, some of the players that I played with, and I'm like, well, you're playing every 3 days. They used to say, yeah, but the training was so kind of minimal, because every 3 days they were playing, you almost build up with that. You almost training without knowing it. You're building that rapport. And yeah, I 100% agree with you. I think yes, if Arsenal are going to win the league this season, it's really, really nice to have options. But I'd like the stable 11 to be there, and then you could change one or two depending on the fixture, or if it's a Carling Cup game. I don't really like. I know we're getting quite further into it, but you make minor little adjustments. But the fact when you're chopping and changing four, five, six players, I'm with you. The best teams that I played against are the and certainly some of the Arsenal teams that I played against. I could name them from start to like from 1 to 11, and I'd go, he's going to be playing there, he's going to be playing there, and you knew what you was coming up against. I think sometimes it can not, I won't say disrupt or disjoint a squad or a team, but it can be a little bit stop start. You know what I mean? And then you are giving other teams excuses to kind of go, well, they didn't win it because of this reason, didn't win it that because of that reason. But I think Arteta is trying to get that 11. I think he knows in his head what 11 he wants to play week in, week out. But just unfortunately for us, we haven't seen it because of the injuries. You want to see Gyökeres, you want to see Eze from the left, you want to see Saka, you want to see obviously Zeba, Mendy, Rice, Odegaard. The back four speaks for itself. But because he gets Saka back, then Odegaard goes down.
Mm.
Odegaard goes back, Martinelli's out. Do you know what I mean? It's so many moving parts, which is why I'm with Jordan in terms of the excuses because we've got a squad built to be able to handle these situations. But I think in any successful team, the foundations of a team needs to be there. And if that's 1 to 11 and you can change little bits here and there, of course you need luck with the injuries. I think you're in a better place when you know 1 to 11, right? This is the team. But if this happens, then here's plan B, plan C, rather than just
Isn't
chopping and changing for the sake of it.
so sorry to jump in there, Dan, but because you're an ex-pro and you know what you're talking about, isn't there a big difference though when 20 years ago you could tell me that wasn't there a whole like if you're the better player, you might get a lighter training session because we need to keep you ready for this game coming up. There was a bit of that back in the day, right? Whereas now it's every player finely tuned regardless. So I think that also leads to, I think James said it. It's weird when you're so finely tuned, it feels like you're more prone to something coming because, a lot's been said about the last 20 years and VAR and referees and the football changing so much for the good. Because remember the leg breaks 20 years ago and the amount of injuries there. But I think the amount of injuries hasn't changed. It's gone down a different route. And I think that's because of modern day systems, modern day managers, modern day requirements for these players. Don't you think that also means that you can't have a 1 to 11 anymore if you're playing this way of football because you're bound to get a player or two out across the season because you require so much from them week in, week out?
But you know what though, when you go back and you're right to a point, but when you talk about now, it's technology. So back then we didn't have technology. So basically, you get injured, like you're sending players out there, but there was no real data to back it up. Whereas nowadays, that's why they're so finely tuned because of the data nowadays. The moment they start touching red zone, it's like right, get him off. Get him. He might injury it. So there is that element to it. Whereas back in the day, like the only time you'd really know that you were injured if you pulled the hamstring, if you felt it. Whereas now
Yeah.
they can tell you that before that even happens. But also as well, when you made about the finely tuned athletes back like now and back then, some of the top players I played with, people like Wayne Rooney, he hated missing games. He didn't care if he played on the Monday, on the Wednesday, on the Friday. He used to moan like crazy. Well, I don't care, like if we're playing every 3 days, you're not wrapping me in cotton wool. I have to play. And I think a lot of the top players now, I think some of them still are like that. But I think there is a mentality kind of shift in terms of there are some players nowadays that are top players that are a little bit like, nah, do you know what? I'll probably leave this week. Like they're almost letting people make excuses for them in terms of going, no, I don't care if we're playing. I want to play for Arsenal or whoever it is. I want to win football matches. Like Declan Rice is a prime example. He will play every single week in every single game and he won't moan. And he's a finely tuned. He's as good as they are. But he's just someone that wants to play games, doesn't want to make excuses. And I think not every top pro now is like Declan.
Yeah, definitely.
Darren, can I ask you a question, Darren? On that point, do you think then we'll get to a point, maybe in the next 5 or maybe in 10 years, where because of what Turkish has outlined there, do you think get to a point where a top player, will think about the longevity of his season and even career, and actually not only in his head think, boy, you know what, I could do with sitting this weekend out, actually vocalize that to the coach and say, coach, I'm one of your top 3 players. I think this Saturday or this Wednesday, just drop me out. I think I'm feeling like I'm getting to that red zone. Do you think we get to a point where players start the opposite of Rooney? Rooney, you're saying, vocally said, play me in every single game. I don't care how fit I am, play me. Do you think we get to a point where players start going the opposite way and like saying, you know what, that game, I think, boss, just you're better off just taking me out on that one and I'll play on the weekend?
Do you know what? Those conversations might have already happened in private, but I think the moment you start that's when there's going to be problems, because you know what it's like, JJB. You're gonna get that, and I understand this, right? From a fan's perspective, you pay your money to go and watch the best players, right? You show up, and it's obviously nowadays football's expensive. I mean, we should know Arsenal tickets. Oh my goodness, like are so expensive, right? And then you show up, you take your family to watch the best players, and the best player's not playing. And then he comes out vocally and goes, "Well, my body wasn't ready for this game, that game." There's going to be uproar. There's going to be uproar.
But it hasn't got to be public. It hasn't got to be public. I'm talking about, let's just say one of the top 3 players at City. Let's say, I don't know, let's say Diaz says to Pep, vocalizes it, but in private, like, Pep, we got Bournemouth on Saturday, but we got Real Madrid on Wednesday. I'm feeling like I'm getting to that bit. Drop me out for Saturday, so I'm good for. So no one knows about it apart from those 2 players. Get to a point where
that would have come out. That conversation would have happened already enough times.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm telling you now that would have been going on for the last. Ever since we started playing so many games, that conversation would definitely be happening 100%. People going into the manager and going, I'm not quite feeling it. I thought you meant public, because I said if it's public, that's a whole different.
Yeah, no.